A human saved the alien princess. Now her father demands he wed her. HFY Sci-Fi Story. HFY Stories. Michael sat alone in the cockpit of his starship, staring out into the vast expanse of space. The stars shimmered like diamonds, distant and cold. His mission was simple: make a routine check on the outlying trade routes and report back to the Federation. But as he drifted deeper into the unknown sectors, something unusual appeared on his radar: a small, unmarked vessel emitting a distress signal. Curiosity piqued, Michael toggled the controls, bringing his ship closer. The ship was damaged, its hull riddled with laser burns. It was drifting aimlessly, and Michael knew it couldn't have been on its own for long. He adjusted his course, bringing the ship alongside, and activated the boarding hatch. Inside, he prepared for anything. He had encountered pirates, alien wildlife, and strange phenomena before, but this felt different. There was something urgent in the distress signal, something personal. When the boarding ramp lowered, Michael entered the vessel. The inside was dark, only dim emergency lights flickering. The air was thick with the smell of burnt metal and something faintly floral. As he moved deeper into the ship, he heard the soft sound of breathing, weak, labored. His hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but he didn't pull it out. Whoever or whatever was aboard, they were in no condition to fight. In a small room at the far end of the ship, he found her. She was lying on the floor, her slender form crumpled in a heap. Her clothes were torn, stained with blood, and she seemed unconscious. Michael knelt beside her, checking for a pulse. Her skin was a pale violet, her features delicate yet sharp. Long silver hair spilled over her shoulders, and there was an elegance to her even in such a state of vulnerability. She wasn't human. Her eyes, closed now, were an unnatural shade of gold that glowed faintly. "Hey," Michael murmured, gently shaking her shoulder. "Are you alive?" She stirred but didn't wake. He had no time to lose. The ship was damaged, and the distress signal had been sent long enough ago that whoever attacked her might still be nearby. Without thinking, Michael scooped her into his arms, cradling her close. He knew he needed to get her to his ship's medical bay before it was too late. As he carried her back to his vessel, the sound of blaster fire echoed from the distance, followed by the growl of engines. Someone was coming after her. Michael's heart raced. His mission was supposed to be routine, but this had suddenly turned into something much more complicated. He rushed back to his ship, securing her in the medical bay. With quick precision, he activated the healing protocols and began running scans. The damage was severe. She had multiple broken bones, internal injuries, and blood loss, but she was alive. Barely. The ship's medical systems began their work, administering painkillers and stabilizing her condition. Michael paced the room, waiting, watching, unable to sit still. He couldn't help but wonder who she was, why she was on that ship, and why anyone would want to kill her. Minutes stretched into hours as the medical systems did their job. Michael watched the alien woman. He still didn't know her name, breathing more steadily now. Her wounds had been healed to some extent, but it would take time for her to fully recover. He sat by her side, his mind racing. The attackers weren't far behind, and Michael knew he needed to act fast. He set the ship on a course toward the nearest Federation station, hoping they would be able to provide help. But even as he piloted his ship, he knew that the danger wasn't over. Whoever had attacked this woman wouldn't just let her go. He wasn't sure why, but Michael couldn't ignore the feeling that there was something far more significant at play. Hours passed, and the woman finally woke. Her eyes flickered open, and Michael was there beside her. Her golden eyes locked onto his, and for a moment there was a strange silence between them. She didn't speak immediately, but the look she gave him was intense, as though she was trying to understand who he was and why he had saved her. "Are you okay?" Michael asked, his voice soft but firm. The woman blinked, her gaze unfocused, as if struggling to comprehend the situation. Then her lips parted and a voice, clear yet faint, escaped her. "Where?" "Where am I?" she asked, her accent unlike any Michael had ever heard before. "You're on my ship. You were injured. I saved you," Michael replied, trying to keep his tone calm. "You were under attack. Do you remember?" She nodded slowly, her head aching as if trying to piece together the fragments of her memory. I was on the ship. They came for me, I thought. I thought I was going to die." Michael's heart clenched. There was something about her words, something deeply personal. She was royalty, that much was clear from the way she carried herself, even now weakened and disoriented. Her grace was undeniable. The question was, who had sent those attackers and why? "I'll get you to safety," Michael said, glancing over at the console. The Federation station was still hours away, but he would get her there. He didn't know who she was yet, but the way she spoke, the way she held herself, it was obvious she wasn't just any ordinary alien. She was important. "Why?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. "Why did you help me? I don't understand." Michael hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I just couldn't leave you behind." Her golden eyes studied him for a long time, and for a moment Michael felt the weight of her gaze. There was something ancient and wise about her, despite her current vulnerability. Then she spoke again, her voice softer this time. "You are human. You should have let me die. My enemies would have been pleased." "Not everyone's your enemy," Michael replied, his voice firm. "Some of us believe in saving lives, no matter who they are." The alien woman remained silent for a moment, as if considering his words. "I am Princess Leora of the Zinthar Empire, and you saved me." The name hit Michael like a ton of bricks. The Zinthar Empire. He had heard of them before, an ancient, powerful civilization known for their advanced technology and vast territories. They were respected, feared, and for all intents and purposes, nearly invincible. And yet here she was, a princess, on the verge of death in the arms of a mere human. Michael's mind raced. He had saved a princess from one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. And now, it seemed, his actions had placed him squarely in the middle of something far larger than he could comprehend. As the ship continued its journey toward Federation space, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Zinthar Empire was known for its pride, its tradition, and its obsession with power. If they came looking for their princess, things would get complicated fast. But as Leora drifted back into a peaceful sleep, Michael couldn't help but wonder. Had he just saved an empire's future, or had he put himself directly in the path of a power struggle that could tear everything apart? Michael had never imagined his simple mission would lead him into the heart of an intergalactic political storm. Yet here he was, aboard his ship, carrying a princess who had been saved by his hand. And now, with each passing hour, the gravity of the situation became more apparent. Leora, the alien princess, was not just a victim of an attack. She was the heir to a vast empire that stretched across the stars. An empire that was now hunting her down. Michael's thoughts raced as he piloted the ship. The Zinthar Empire, as Leora had revealed, was one of the oldest and most powerful in the galaxy. Its military might and advanced technology were the stuff of legend. The very idea that a human could save one of its royal family members seemed ridiculous. But Leora was alive, and Michael had done it. She was no longer a lifeless body drifting through space. She was breathing, healing, and, at least for now, safe. But the question loomed large. For how long? The journey to Federation space was long. Michael's ship wasn't the fastest, but it had served him well on many missions. As he glanced back at the medical bay, he saw Leora resting, her fragile form still recuperating. She had been awake for a short while earlier, but exhaustion had quickly overtaken her, and now she slept peacefully, free from the pain she had endured hours earlier. But Michael knew they couldn't remain here forever. The Federation's neutral territory wasn't far, but it wasn't secure either. He was carrying a princess from a powerful empire, and that would make him a target. He needed to get her somewhere safe and fast. But the more he thought about it, the more complicated the situation seemed. Leora had awoken briefly after Michael's declaration that he was taking her to the Federation. Her golden eyes had studied him with an intensity that made him uneasy. She had thanked him, but there was no mistaking the wariness in her gaze. She was royalty, and royalty didn't easily trust outsiders. Despite the mistrust, Michael couldn't help but feel drawn to her. There was something about Leora, her calm in the face of danger, her quiet strength, that intrigued him. She was different from anyone he had ever met. Her empire was built on power and tradition, but she seemed to have doubts, questions about the world she was meant to rule. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her story than he could see, and perhaps more to this whole situation than he understood. As the hours passed, Michael kept a steady course toward Federation space, his mind occupied with both the looming danger and the strange connection he felt to Leora. What had started as a routine checkup had turned into something far greater, something that would change his life in ways he couldn't even begin to fathom. Suddenly, a soft beeping sound broke the silence. Michael glanced at the console in front of him, his hand instinctively reaching for the controls. It was a communication signal, not from the Federation, but from an unknown source. His heart skipped a beat. Had the Zinthar Empire already found them? He hesitated for only a moment before opening the channel. The screen flickered, and a stern voice came through. "This is Commander Nerk of the Zinthar Empire. You are in possession of one of our royal family members. Return her to us immediately, or you will regret this decision." Michael's breath caught in his throat. He had expected something like this, but hearing the threat so plainly made the danger feel all too real. The Zinthar Empire was not known for its mercy, and if they wanted Leora back, they wouldn't hesitate to use force. "I'm not handing her over to anyone," Michael replied, his voice firm. "She's under my protection now." There was a long pause on the other end of the transmission before Nerk spoke again, his tone cold and calculated. "Do you not understand what you are involved in, human? The princess is the key to the survival of the Zinthar Empire. Her life is not a matter of simple choice. You have no idea what you've done by interfering. Return her to us and we will ensure your safety. Refuse and we will come for you." Michael's pulse quickened. He wasn't afraid of a threat, but this wasn't just a matter of survival. It was a question of loyalty, of right and wrong. He had saved Leora, not for some reward, but because it was the right thing to do. He wasn't going to let anyone take her back. "I said no," Michael replied, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "You want her, you'll have to come through me." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a cold silence in its wake. Michael leaned back in his seat, his mind racing. He was on a collision course with a powerful empire that would stop at nothing to retrieve its princess. He knew that the Federation might offer some protection, but it was no match for the Zinthar's military might. His options were growing slim. He turned his attention back to the medical bay, where Leora slept. The sound of her steady breathing was a small comfort in this sea of chaos. For a moment, he allowed himself to relax, knowing that at least she was safe, for now. But as the hours continued to pass, his thoughts returned to the Emperor, Leora's father. The more he thought about it, the more he understood the gravity of the situation. The Emperor wasn't just any ruler. He was a leader who had seen his empire nearly crumble in the past. To him, Leora was more than just his daughter. She was the symbol of his dynasty, the key to securing his future. And now, Michael had become the catalyst for a political nightmare that he never asked for. Michael didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. The moment he saved Leora, his life had been irrevocably changed. The Zinthar Empire wasn't going to let her go without a fight, and neither was he. The silence of space was broken only by the hum of the ship systems, and the weight of their predicament hung in the air like a heavy storm cloud. Michael knew he couldn't keep running forever. Sooner or later, the Empire would catch up to them. He needed to act. He needed to make a decision that would affect not only his future but Leora's as well. As he steered the ship closer to Federation space, he took a deep breath and glanced back at the medical bay. There was a decision to be made, and he was running out of time. What would he do when they arrived? Should he hand her over to the Federation for protection, or was there another way out of this mess? When Leora finally woke up, it was clear she had been thinking deeply about their situation as well. Her golden eyes met Michael's, full of questions. "You've heard from them, haven't you?" she asked quietly. Her voice, though soft, carried an edge of determination. She was already planning her next move. Michael nodded. "They're coming for you." "And you still refuse to give me up?" she asked, her voice betraying a hint of surprise but also something else, something he couldn't quite place. Maybe it was admiration. "Yeah," Michael replied, his voice steady. "You've got my word. I'm not handing you over to anyone." She studied him for a long moment, her eyes narrowing slightly as though weighing his words. Finally, she nodded, a small but genuine smile curving her lips. "You're braver than most people I know, human," she said softly. "But this isn't just about bravery. It's about something far bigger, the Zinthar Empire, my father. They won't stop until I'm back in their hands." Michael met her gaze. He knew that now, more than ever, his choice was about more than just saving one life. It was about the future, about standing up for what was right, no matter the odds. "We'll figure this out," he said, his voice firm with conviction. And so the battle began, not just between the human and the alien empire, but within Michael himself. He knew that the road ahead would be perilous, but there was no turning back. He had made his choice. And Leora, the princess, would not face her fate alone. The ship had been in motion for several days now, and Michael's thoughts had become a constant swirl of strategy and uncertainty. He had a princess from the Zinthar Empire on board, and she wasn't just anyone. Leora was their heir, the symbol of their royal bloodline, and the only person who could secure the future of an entire galaxy-spanning empire. And yet she was here, on his ship, in the midst of a war she didn't choose. The closer they got to Federation space, the more Michael could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him. The Zinthar Empire wasn't known for mercy, and the transmission he had received from Commander Nerk was only a taste of what they could do. He had refused to turn Leora over, but that meant there was no turning back now. The Zinthar were coming, and they wouldn't stop until they had her. Despite all this, Michael couldn't help but feel a strange bond forming between him and the alien princess. It wasn't just her beauty or her otherworldly grace. It was the way she carried herself, the quiet strength she exuded even in the face of danger. He saw the conflict in her eyes every time she looked at him, as if she were torn between gratitude and a deep-seated obligation to her empire. Michael knew she didn't want to be here, not like this, not as a pawn in a game she hadn't chosen. In the medical bay, Leora rested, though she was far from fully recovered. Her injuries had been severe, but the ship's medical systems had done their best to heal her. Still, the emotional toll of everything she had endured, the attack, the escape, the uncertainty of her future, was evident in the tiredness in her eyes whenever she woke. Today, when she woke up, it wasn't just to check on her physical state. She had something to say. Michael could feel the tension in the air the moment she entered the cockpit, her golden eyes meeting his with a mix of resolve and hesitation. "Michael," she began, her voice steady despite the strain, "I need to talk to you about something important." He looked up from the console and gestured to the seat beside him. "Of course, what's on your mind?" She hesitated for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. "I know what you did. You saved me, and I am grateful, but this is bigger than you or me." Michael frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Leora's expression hardened. "The Zinthar Empire does not take kindly to interference. You've seen how they reacted when they learned I was missing. They will not stop, not until I'm back in their hands." "You've put yourself in danger, Michael. You have to understand that." I know that, Michael replied. But I'm not going to just hand you over to them, not after what I've seen. You're more than just some political pawn. You're a person. Leora's gaze softened for a moment, but the weight of the reality she faced soon returned. I appreciate your words, Michael. I really do. But you don't understand the complexity of the situation. I am not just a person. I am the heir to the throne. I carry the weight of an entire empire's future on my shoulders. She paused, and for a moment, Michael saw a flicker of fear in her eyes, something she hadn't allowed herself to show until now. I know that, Michael said quietly, but I can't just watch you be taken back to an empire that doesn't care about you. I can't stand by while they use you as a pawn in their political game. Leora's gaze dropped to the floor, and for a moment Michael thought she might argue further. But when she looked back up at him, there was something different in her eyes, something like resignation. I can't escape who I am, she said softly. And I can't change the fact that the future of the Zinthar Empire depends on my return. Michael didn't say anything for a long while. He felt his own frustrations growing. This wasn't about politics. It wasn't about empires or ancient bloodlines. It was about a human being. A woman who had been caught in the middle of something far bigger than she had ever wanted. Suddenly, a new communication pinged on his console. Michael's heart skipped a beat. This time, it was a direct transmission. It wasn't from the Federation. It wasn't even from the rebels. It was from the Emperor of the Zinthar Empire himself. Michael's finger hesitated over the console, but after a moment's consideration, he pressed the button to open the channel. The screen flickered to life, revealing a tall, imposing figure. His skin was a deep shade of blue, and his eyes were cold, calculating. He was dressed in ornate armor, signifying his position as the Emperor of the Zinthar Empire. His presence alone seemed to command the space around him. "Human," the Emperor said, his voice deep and full of authority, "I am Emperor Zalor of the Zinthar Empire. You have caused a great disturbance by taking my daughter, but I am willing to offer you a choice. Return her to us and we will let you live. Refuse and you will die by the hands of my warriors." Michael's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a threat. It was an ultimatum. The Zinthar Empire had never been known for diplomacy. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. But the Emperor's next words were even more chilling. "I know you are a man of honor, human," Emperor Zalor continued, "but you cannot possibly understand the consequences of your actions. My daughter is the future of the Empire. Without her, we face civil war. The entire galaxy would plunge into chaos. Your refusal to comply will not only destroy you, but it will tear apart everything you know." Michael could feel the weight of the Emperor's words pressing down on him. This wasn't just about Leora's life. This was about the balance of power in the galaxy itself. And now, for the first time, Michael realized the true stakes of what he had done. "I will not return her," Michael said, his voice firm. "She deserves better than to be a pawn in your political games." The Emperor's gaze hardened, and for a moment it seemed as if the very air in the room had grown colder. "You choose death, then." The transmission ended abruptly, and Michael sat back in his chair, his mind racing. The Zinthar Empire would stop at nothing to get Leora back. The Emperor had made his intentions clear, and now Michael was forced to make a decision that would change everything. "Michael!" Leora's voice interrupted his thoughts, and he turned to face her. She was standing in the doorway of the cockpit, her expression unreadable. "Leora," Michael said, his voice low, "they know we're here, the Emperor. He gave me an ultimatum. Either I hand you over or we both die." Leora took a deep breath, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. "I know what that means," she said, "and I know what you're thinking. But you have to understand something. I cannot let you die for me. You have done more than anyone could ever ask. But this is my fight now. It always has been." Michael shook his head. "I didn't ask for this fight. I didn't ask to get involved in your empire's problems." Leora stepped closer to him, her presence commanding yet gentle. But you did, Michael. You saved me. And now, whether you want to or not, you are part of this. And I will not let you face this alone. There was something in her voice, a conviction Michael hadn't heard before. It was the voice of someone who knew that their fate was sealed, but who still chose to stand and fight for what they believed in. "We will find another way," Leora said firmly. "I will not return to my father, not like this. There has to be another way." Michael looked at her, his mind still reeling from the conversation with the Emperor. But despite everything, despite the fear and uncertainty, he felt a surge of determination rise within him. "I'm with you, Leora," he said, his voice steady. "We'll figure this out, together." Leora gave him a small, grateful smile. "Then it's settled. We fight, not just for my life, but for the future of the galaxy." And so the two of them, once strangers caught in the crossfire of intergalactic politics, now stood united. With enemies on every side and the weight of the universe pressing down on them, Michael and Leora knew that their journey had only just begun. The hum of the ship's engines was a constant, steady presence, but it didn't provide the comfort it once had. Now, every vibration felt like a reminder of the danger they were in. The Zinthar Empire was closing in, their reach vast and unforgiving. Michael had once thought that saving Leora from her attackers would be the hardest part of his mission. But now, he realized the true challenge lay in what came next. Leora stood by the window, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. Her reflection in the glass was a stark contrast to the galaxy beyond. She had been raised to rule, to inherit a throne that stretched across worlds, but now she found herself hiding in a human ship, her life in the hands of someone who hadn't signed up for any of this. Michael walked up beside her, his footsteps light on the ship's metal floors. For a moment, he didn't speak. There was an understanding between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that they were facing something far bigger than either of them had expected. "We can't keep running," Michael said quietly, his voice almost drowned out by the hum of the engines. "They'll catch us, they're too powerful." Leora turned her gaze toward him, her golden eyes filled with determination. "We can't just give up either. I will not be a puppet for my father. You're right. I don't belong to him, and I don't belong to the Empire. I belong to something else, something more." Michael nodded, his hands clasped behind his back. "But what do we do now? I won't let them take you, but I'm not sure what options we have left." Leora's eyes flickered with a moment of doubt, but she quickly masked it with resolve. "There are always choices, Michael. We don't have to keep running, we can take a stand." Michael knew she was right. They could continue to flee, always one step ahead of the Empire, but that was no way to live. And if they kept running, they would never truly be free. He couldn't protect her forever, but if they fought back, if they took the battle to the Empire's doorstep, that might change everything. "All right," he said, his voice growing firmer. "But how do we fight an empire like that? They have fleets, armies, entire planets at their command." Leora turned to face him fully, her posture straight, her chin lifted in quiet defiance. "You don't fight them with strength alone. You fight them with strategy, and with the right allies." Michael looked at her, unsure. "Allies? Do you have people who can help us?" Her lips curled into a small smile. "I have a few contacts, people who owe me favors. Not many, but enough to make a difference. The problem is, they're not in the Empire's heart. They're scattered across the outer colonies, people who want freedom, people who want a chance to stand against the Emperor's rule. But we need to act quickly. If we stay in one place too long, the Empire will find us." Michael felt a spark of hope. Maybe they didn't need to fight alone. Maybe there was a way to rally others, to build a force that could take on the Empire. "We'll need to make contact with them," Michael said, his mind working quickly. "We'll need to plan this carefully. A direct attack on the Empire is suicide, but if we can gather enough support, we can start a revolution." Leora's eyes gleamed with a quiet intensity. "That's exactly what I've been thinking." But even as she spoke, Michael couldn't ignore the weight of the choices they were making. They weren't just deciding how to fight back. They were deciding whether to risk everything. If they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Zinthar Empire wouldn't just destroy them, they would crush everyone who stood with them. That evening, as they prepared to make contact with Leora's allies, the tension in the ship was palpable. Michael couldn't stop thinking about the Emperor's ultimatum. Leora had chosen to fight and she wasn't backing down. But what did that mean for him? What did it mean for a human to join forces with an alien princess in a battle against an empire that spanned across galaxies? He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even a diplomat. He was just a man who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. And yet, here he was, about to make a choice that could change the fate of countless lives. The communication system buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. Leora's voice came through the comms, steady and calm. "It's time." Michael glanced at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. There was no turning back now. He nodded. "Let's do it." The next few days were a blur of messages and encrypted transmissions. Leora's contacts were cautious, but they came through. A few promised to meet them at a hidden base on the edge of Federation space. A few more pledged their support, ready to aid in whatever way they could. The plan was forming, slowly but surely, but Michael still couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Each message they sent out, each contact they made, only brought them closer to the inevitable confrontation with the Empire. The Zinthar would stop at nothing to reclaim their princess, and Michael knew that once they had enough information to pinpoint their location, the Empire would come for them with everything they had. Leora had promised him they wouldn't be alone in this fight, but Michael couldn't ignore the cold reality. They were about to take on a galaxy-spanning empire. They were up against not just a government, but a ruthless force that had crushed entire civilizations without mercy. And yet, despite the fear gnawing at his insides, Michael felt something else, something stronger than fear. It was the fire of purpose. The more they prepared, the more he understood why he had to stand beside Leora. She was more than just a princess to him. She was a symbol of resistance, a beacon for those who had lived under the oppressive rule of the Zinthar Empire. If they failed, they would be just another footnote in history, but if they succeeded, they could change the galaxy forever. The night before they were supposed to meet their first allies, Michael sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars. The darkness of space felt endless, a reminder of how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. His mind raced with questions. Was this the right choice? Would their efforts be enough? And even if they managed to rally enough support, would it be enough to challenge the might of the Zinthar Empire? The soft sound of footsteps behind him brought him back to the present. He turned to see Leora standing in the doorway, her figure silhouetted by the dim light of the control room. She had been quiet for most of the day, focused on the task at hand. But now, there was something different about her. The weight of the upcoming confrontation hung heavy in the air between them. "You're thinking too much," Leora said, her voice softer than usual. Michael chuckled, though it was a tired sound. "I think too much about everything, but this is different." She stepped into the room, her golden eyes meeting his. "I know, but you're not alone in this. We're in this together, remember?" He nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for her words. "I won't let you face this alone. I gave you my word." Leora smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "I'm glad you did, but I know this isn't easy for you. This isn't what you signed up for." Michael met her gaze. "No, it's not. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm here now, and I'm not backing down, not from you. Not from what's right." For a moment they stood there in silence, the weight of their choices hanging in the air like an unspoken agreement. The stakes were higher than either of them had ever imagined, but neither was willing to turn back. Finally, Leora broke the silence. "Tomorrow we begin. Tomorrow we take the first step towards something bigger. Whatever happens, we make our stand." Michael nodded again, a quiet resolve filling his chest. "Tomorrow we fight." And with that, the two of them knew there was no going back. The choice had been made. The fight for the future had begun. The time for hesitation had passed. The ship now hummed with the tension of impending action. Michael stood in the cockpit, his eyes locked on the stars ahead. The weight of what he was about to do settled heavily on his shoulders, but he knew there was no turning back now. He had promised to help Leora, and that promise was more than just words. It was a commitment to something greater than himself. The fate of the galaxy was now in their hands. Leora stood beside him, her presence calm but undeniably powerful. She was no longer the frightened princess who had been at the mercy of the Empire. She had grown, both in strength and in determination. The alliance they had built was fragile, but it was their only chance. The rebels, the freedom fighters scattered across the galaxy, had answered her call. They were ready to stand against the Empire, ready to fight for a future where the Zinthar Empire's oppressive rule would no longer be the law of the land. The Federation wasn't far. They had arranged to meet with the rebel leaders at a hidden base on the outskirts of Federation space. It was a place that few knew about, isolated, protected by an old network of allies who had fought against the Empire for years. Their goal was clear: unite the scattered forces, stage a coordinated strike, and free the galaxy from the Emperor's iron grip. But as Michael piloted the ship toward their destination, he couldn't help but feel the uncertainty that still lingered. Could they really succeed? The Zinthar Empire had more power, more resources, and more soldiers than any rebellion could hope to match. They weren't just fighting for freedom, they were fighting for survival. Leora was the key. Her very existence threatened the Empire. She was the heir to the throne, the future of an empire that could either collapse or rise again. The Emperor would not allow her to remain free for long, and Michael knew that as soon as they met with the rebels, their position would become known. The clock was ticking. "We'll be ready when we arrive," Leora said, her voice breaking the silence. She had been watching him for a while now, her gaze thoughtful as if she could sense his thoughts. Michael glanced over at her, offering a small smile. "I just hope we're ready enough. This isn't going to be easy." "I know," she replied quietly. "But it's the only choice we have. We either fight for something better or we let the Empire continue to crush everything in its path. I won't let that happen, not anymore." Michael nodded. She had made her choice and he had made his. They would fight together. It was the only way forward. As the hours passed, the tension grew. They had no way of knowing if the Empire was already aware of their plans or if they were still flying under the radar. Leora's contacts had been careful, but there was no such thing as complete security when it came to the Empire. The Zinthar had spies everywhere, and the moment they set foot on the rebel base, they would be a target. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the coordinates blinked on Michael's console. They were close. The rebel base was just ahead. He felt a surge of anticipation mixed with anxiety. "We're almost there," Michael said, his voice steady despite the nerves swirling inside him. Leora's hand brushed against his arm, a silent gesture of reassurance. "We're not alone in this, Michael. We never were." With one last glance at the stars ahead, Michael set the ship on a course for the hidden base. It was time to face whatever came next. The base was hidden deep in a barren asteroid field, far from the eyes of the Empire. As they approached, Michael could see the faint outline of ships docked in the shadows of the asteroids. Small but numerous. Ships that belonged to the rebels, fighters who had defied the Empire for years. They docked and Michael could feel the weight of the moment as they stepped off the ship. Leora was walking beside him, her posture strong, though there was a quiet tension in her eyes. This was it, the beginning of the end. The rebel leader, a grizzled man named Commander Jalen, met them at the docking bay. He was tall with a scar running down his cheek, evidence of years spent fighting against the Empire. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and he wasted no time with pleasantries. "You're Leora," Jalen said, his voice gruff but respectful. "The Empire's heir," Leora nodded, And you're the leader of the rebels. I hope you're ready for war." Jalen gave a grim smile. "We've been ready for a long time, but we needed you. Without you, there is no hope of winning this." Michael stepped forward. "We're ready to fight. We'll do whatever it takes." Jalen studied him for a moment before nodding. "Good. We've been assembling forces. There's a rebellion brewing in several systems. We need your help to bring it all together." Leora stepped closer. "What's the plan?" Jalen's expression darkened. "We take the fight to the Empire. They've been oppressing the outer colonies for too long. It's time we hit them where it hurts. We'll start by taking control of key strategic locations. Once we have the momentum, we'll move in on the Zinthar capital. But we need to move fast. The Empire won't hesitate to destroy us." It was a bold plan, and Michael knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was their only chance. The first strike would have to be swift and decisive. They couldn't afford to waste time. The moment the Zinthar realized what was happening, they would retaliate with everything they had. Leora turned to Michael, her eyes filled with determination. "We can do this, Michael." "We have to," he nodded, understanding the gravity of the decision. "I'm with you every step of the way." The next few days were a blur of strategy meetings, training, and preparation. Michael spent time getting to know the rebels, learning their strengths and weaknesses. There was a fierce resolve among them, but they were also outnumbered and under-equipped compared to the Empire. Still, they had something the Empire didn't: a cause. They were fighting for freedom, for a future where the galaxy wasn't ruled by a single, oppressive empire. Leora was busy too, meeting with commanders, speaking to the troops, rallying them with her words and her presence. She was their symbol of hope, the reason they had all come together. Michael could see how deeply they trusted her, how they believed in her vision for a better future. It wasn't long before the first strike began. They hit a Zinthar supply station on the edge of an uncharted system. The rebels were quick and efficient, catching the Empire by surprise. Michael and Leora watched from the command center as the battle unfolded on the screens. Rebel fighters swooped in, overwhelming the Empire's forces. The station fell in under an hour, a small but significant victory. "Not bad," Michael said, a smile tugging at his lips. Leora's smile matched his, though there was no time to celebrate. "This is just the beginning." And it was. In the following weeks, the rebels struck at several key targets, each victory giving them more confidence. They gathered more allies, more ships, and more resources. The tide was beginning to turn, but the Zinthar Empire wasn't blind to the growing rebellion. They retaliated, sending fleets to crush the rebels wherever they were found. The war had begun in earnest, but it wasn't just a war of armies and ships. It was a war of ideals. The rebels were fighting for something the Empire couldn't comprehend: freedom. They didn't just want to defeat the Zinthar. They wanted to replace the Empire with something better. A system where people had a voice, where rulers were chosen not by blood, but by the will of the people. It was the kind of future that Leora had always dreamed of. But now it wasn't just her dream. It was the dream of countless others who had joined the fight. As the final battle approached, Michael stood beside Leora on the bridge of their ship, watching the fleet gather. The fleet was small compared to the Empire's, but it was growing stronger with each passing day. The final strike would come soon. They would take the fight directly to the Emperor's doorstep. "You ready?" Michael asked, his voice steady. Leora looked out at the fleet, her eyes filled with the weight of the moment. "I have to be." Together, they would take the future into their own hands. The Zinthar Empire might be powerful, but they were no longer the only force in the galaxy. Michael had made his choice, and so had Leora. They were no longer pawns in a game, they were the players. The final battle was coming, and with it, a new beginning.